All right. So today we're going to talk about our second blog post of the small business series, which is how to choose a great graphic designer for your small business. So, we've got here with us today Calvin, who's been on the frontside consulting team for a couple of years now. And I feel really lucky to have Calvin on board because he has been able to support a lot of our clients in their graphic design needs. So, Facebook ads in particular is one of our bread and butter channels. It's one that I think that we do really, really well. And Calvin has been like absolutely instrumental in a number of different client relationships where we're able to just put out some really, really great creative for them. So, Calvin, say hi to the internet.
Hey, how's it going?
So, Calvin, one thing that I really appreciated about you is that there's a lot of great graphic designers out there, but there's a big difference between graphic design and like video editing for storytelling, or kind of telling a brand story for like say organic content or what have you, and like performance creative. So I've always appreciated that you seem to understand the difference there. Can you tell me a little bit about like what in your mind the difference is there in specifics,
Difference between a good designer and a bad designer, or what makes a good designer?
or just the differences between like great storytelling
Hmm.
creative and good like performance and conversion creative?
Mm. Yeah, with good storytelling creative, I mean, I feel like for that, you're trying to tell your brand story and communicate, you know, and find a way to bring people into that and invite them in. Um, and I think that's like longer term. In terms of like that kind of creative, I think it's like you're just like inviting them into the story. But then for performance, it's very much like you're driving them to take a specific action
Mm.
uh, in that moment that they interact with the creative. So I feel like there's like one end where you're bringing them along for like a longer ride, and you're, you know, explaining to that like to users and communicating your brand story and like, what makes you valuable, why people should care.
Mm.
And then for performance creative, I think it's more you're trying to drive a specific action and speak to a problem that you're solving or whatnot.
So it sounds like kind of the difference is like storytelling, inviting someone to be a part of something as opposed to like selling someone to something or selling something to someone. Like you
They
need
also go
this
hand in
thing.
hand. I think in order to sell, you also have to like be able to like communicate to the other person and make them realize, oh
Right.
wait, I see themselves in this story. Like, oh, this is relevant for me. Like,
Right.
I
Right.
feel
Right.
seen.
Yeah.
I think having potential customer feel seen and understood in their problems or what they want, and like offering a way for them to solve that problem or for them to improve their life in a certain way. I think that's
Right. 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 Yeah, and so we're kind of communicating that, like, hey, I understand your needs and concerns as a customer or potential client, and then just kind of communicating that through the creative, whether it's like, hey, we can solve a problem for you, or we've got this thing for you, or we've got this experience for you. That's is that kind of what you're getting at?
yeah, like communicating what the business offers can solve or add
I
value to
see.
someone's life with what they actually want to achieve and
Right.
drive them to take action to you know having that end result that they want, that they
Right.
maybe have been waiting for. Like, oh, I have this problem, but I don't have a solution, or I haven't really
Yep.
taken action to actually solve that. I think the marketing creative will really it should inspire that action, or for someone to take that first step.
Right, right. And then to your earlier point, it's not necessarily that one is like super, super hardcore one and the other. Maybe they just kind of bias a little bit in one direction versus the other, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when it depends on what your goal is for what you're putting out in terms of what the creative is supposed to be doing. Whether it's like if it's a paid ad that wants like for driving sales, then it's a different approach than um, you know. organic content or like a blog series or something like
Right,
that.
right, right, right. Cool. Yeah, great points. Let's kind of just roll through what we wrote up here. I guess so. You wrote this. I am not good at choosing a good graphic designer. I got really lucky with you coming on board because we just had some mutual friends. You had the background in doing some agency work before, so we just kind of gave it a shot. And then it happened to be like, oh crap, Calvin is actually really good at this kind of graphic design and creative sort of thing. But yeah, why don't you tell me what, in your opinion, makes for a good graphic designer when working with like a marketing organization or a small business?
I think trust is really important. So like finding someone with the proper skills, but like not only skills, but it. I feel like you should also find someone that you can really communicate well with. Um, it's a two-way street as well. Like being a great communicator and finding someone that can communicate well and
Yep.
understanding what exactly you want to achieve. So I think knowing exactly the goal you have for whatever you're hiring this person for is the most important thing. And then from there,
Mm-hmm.
I think finding them is, becomes a lot easier. Um,
Right, right.
and,
Yeah, it's
there's a
kind
number of ways to
of
do it.
it's sort of like when we run ads, like we have a particular like conversion goal in mind. Are we trying to generate a lead? Are we trying to make a sale? Like we have to understand what that is in order to optimize for that, right? So it's not much different maybe in trying to
Yeah.
find a graphic designer.
Because when you have that clarity, the designer that you hire is also going to know exactly what it's for because, you know, design should be, the designer should just be able to aid that goal that you have for whatever they're making. And finding them can come a number of ways. Like first of which is like, you know, the best way I think is always referral.
Yeah,
You
yeah, I
know,
agree. Yeah, that's how we came across you.
yeah. So getting looking within your network and finding people that can vet for someone else and someone that
Hmm.
you can trust is one thing. But if you don't have that, there are ways that you could like you know, go outside into the market and find someone, like to go into the market and find someone to do your designs and bring them in house. So, you can hire in house or you can hire freelancers. It's kind of the same thing though, depending on
Right,
what
right,
your
right, right.
needs are.
Yeah, it's kind of how much graphic designer do you need, right? Do you need just a little bit, or do you need a lot in terms of
Yeah.
whether you should hire a contractor or full time, right? Okay. Where if you weren't introduced to me through kind of mutual contacts, how do you think we would have come across each other, like Fiverr or LinkedIn, or what do you think?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different sites. If you're trying to go a little bit cheaper and hire overseas, and Fiverr and websites like Upwork are great. But if you want to, that's kind of like the best place to put a posting for a job and to have people respond to you, and you can test their portfolios and whatnot. There's a little bit
Hmm.
of a longer drawn out process there, but you do get cheaper work. If you want to go a little bit higher level, I recommend websites like Behance. Um, that's hosted by Adobe, and that's where a lot of like designers will host their portfolios, where you can see
Mm-hmm.
large projects, and typically they're a bit more curated and more higher level, and you can find a lot more um, local designers if that's something that is of interest to you.
Right, right, right. Okay, so speaking of which, is it's probably a good idea to look at at a designer's portfolio.
Yeah.
If you were to, look over someone's portfolio, um, let's say it's for the purposes of like digital ads or like website branding, what sorts of things would you look for, Kellen?
First of all, I would want to see if they've done any similar projects, if they've actually created ads for social before. I think that's a good place to start, and because I feel like if they have done those projects, they'll kind of understand and be able to quickly, you don't have to brief them as much, and they'll typically understand like the platforms that you're working
Mm-hmm.
with. I think having that kind of understanding of, how their assets are going to be placed within different platforms is really important, because a lot of these ad platforms have a lot of rules and best practices and requirements. Um, so it's good to find someone that is aware of that. And if not, you can
Right,
also
right, right.
communicate that. You'll just have to do the extra work of figuring out what the best practices are for each platform yourself. But it saves a lot of time when you find someone that already knows.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, we've done so much testing of like creative and video and everything that, maybe for me, it wouldn't be that hard to kind of just say like, hey, on like a 20-second video, I need like a static ad that's like this size that shows the product, blah, blah, blah. But yeah,
Mhm.
for somebody who might be new, it would be good to have someone with more experience. Okay. What about like subject matter expertise or industry experience?
Oh yeah, definitely finding a designer that has designed things that are within your business niche could be really, really helpful. Um, Having that industry knowledge on the type of business you have, um, I think having that understanding of like the type of industry you're in will just help, because just knowing like how the audience and like the people that the customers within that demographic, what they respond to in terms of design, language, or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what is commonly seen.
Right. So
You can
it's
always,
like,
yeah, you can always do that research, but I think having someone that is also an enthusiast or has worked with similar businesses, it'll allow them to like, it'll take less time for them to understand what you need and how it should look or live out in the real world or in the wild.
right, right. Like, and similarly, we work with like a lot of like outdoor industry clients because there's a lot of just outdoor industry subject matter expertise between, everyone at Frontside Consulting. So similarly, hey, this sort of thing is going to look weird, like a climber, having too much chalk on his feet or something like that might look weird. And just being able to understand all those little cultural pieces is probably important. So. Nice. What about if I was looking at a graphic designer's resume? What are like the technical skills that I'm looking for? Like, how would I, if somebody handed me a graphic designer's resume, like how would I, look at this and say like, okay, this person knows what he's doing or he doesn't?
Um, it depends on what you're hiring them for. Like certain designers are better at doing infographics. Some people, I mean, there's different kinds of designers. Like there's designers that like do posters, right? Like music
Mm-hmm.
posters, or like um, I think in the resume, like having some agency experience would be good. Working with like other ad agencies, or working like in house at companies of a similar industry, um, and just kind of seeing if in their resume the kinds of designs they worked on are relevant to the things that you need designed.
I see. So what you're saying is like the medium also really matters, right? So like what comes to mind for me is like wine label designers. Like that's kind of a really specific niche. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like whether they design labels or they design like ad creatives, or website assets and stuff like that. I think that does matter to some degree, but in the end of the day, I think um, the portfolio is really what's gonna
Right, right. So it sounds
more
like
important to me.
specific skills, like oh, I know Adobe Photoshop or Figma or Canva, like that. That kind of doesn't matter that much these days. Is that about right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter as long as they can deliver you the assets that you need.
Right,
Um, so if you're a business that uses Figma and is really important to you, I think if the designer is good enough, they could figure out how to
right.
um,
Okay.
make
So
the
like the
design.
real technical part of it, kind of it sort of doesn't matter. I mean, maybe they need to understand like the dimensions and that sort of thing, but that kind of comes from like, hey, this person has experience in like a channel. So hey, in their portfolio they have like Facebook ads. They understand the feed dimensions, the story dimensions, etc. Like kind of what we're looking at then.
Yeah, the portfolio is really the resume. Um,
Okay, great.
in terms of like the resume, I think it's important if they work with like, real businesses is important too.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you're a bit larger business or you have higher needs of design, it could be good to find someone that can work at that pace. Um,
Very cool. Okay. And then as far as like, with freelancers and, budget and scope of work and timelines, like how do you have that conversation with a graphic designer?
yeah, I think just being ready with everything on your end as a business owner is ideal. Like, you know, figuring out like the budget that you have for the project, the scope of work, like how many assets you need from the designer, what placements
Mm-hmm.
you need, how the revision process works, whether or not um, you want them to create a bunch of different options and then choose the best one. There's a lot of ways to go about it. But having that clarity is just gonna create a better working relationship with someone.
Right.
Just so
So
that
like myself as the business owner, I have to have like all my ducks in a row and communicate my expectations to this designer as clearly as possible and say, I need this, this, and this. Here's my shot list. Here's my asset list. Like I need to make sure that that is all cleaned up. Is that about
and
right?
then asking the right questions to them so that you can get the right information that you need to determine whether or not it's going to work out between the two of you, and you guys can
Mm-hmm.
both be on the same page with things that your expectations for the project or
Right, right,
longer
right.
term.
So it sounds like it's all about just like making sure that you've got goals and communications dialed, right? So like
I think
even when you're talking
communication.
about the creative, it's like what is the goal of the creative? What is it supposed to do, right? And having that like really, really clearly defined, even when we're communicating, like, hey, new graphic designer, I want, like this goal, and I have to communicate all my expectations as clearly as possible. Does that sound about right, Calvin?
Yeah, communication I think is the key and the core of all of it, because you got to communicate what you want, but then also they're helping you communicate to like the wider
Yeah.
market and to your potential customers or existing customers. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, communication is probably the most important thing.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. We got just a couple minutes left. Do you have? Here's a fun question for you, Calvin. What is like? Do you have like like freelance graphic designer horror story you want to tell?
Um, I think, let's see, freelance graphic designer horror story. I have.
I mean, the classic one is just like the whole like, oh, I want you to do this. Oh, I changed my mind. Oh, I changed my mind again, and now I'm angry about it. Right?
Oh yeah, it's always a communication thing, because like it's
Right.
whenever you have extra surprises later down the road, like, okay, this is what I want. Actually, could you make it this color? Or, ooh, I don't like the font here. Or actually, can you change the message completely? Or it's like
Mm-hmm.
when on my end as a freelancer, it gets very frustrating when like the client doesn't really know what they want, or they
Yeah. Right.
continuously
Right.
change their mind throughout the process. So like when they want something in the beginning of the discussion, and then once I create it and that conversation changes, or the goal changes, or the direction changes, that can be pretty frustrating. So I
Right.
think just laying everything out at the beginning is going to be the most important thing.
Okay. So
You need to
so
make wiggle room for
sure. Sure.
for changes down the road. I think that should be communicated too. Like, okay, let's try this, but we might change the direction as well depending on what we see. I think just having that all laid out, I think, is going to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah. Again, it's like goals and communication,
Yeah,
right? Just be clear about both of those things. So
yeah,
cool. Yeah, I
yeah.
think this was a good chat. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, that's it for today. We'll put a link to the rest of the blog post so you can check it out, and as well as links to where you can sign up for the newsletter and find out more great information about digital marketing like this. So thanks, everyone.